If you think about the average citizen in the City of Cortland, their primary experience with the judicial system is going to be with the Cortland City Court. In that respect, I can't think of a court that would have more importance for the typical citizen of Cortland than the City Court. It might be something as simple as answering a parking infraction or a minor traffic infraction. It might be something as troubling for that individual as appearing in court to give testimony if he or she was a victim of a crime in the City of Cortland. I also think of common experiences that citizens have when they're called for jury duty and go through that experience and perhaps sit on a jury, or individuals who come before the court with a small claims proceeding or a landlord-tenant dispute. Those citizens need to be assured that the judge who sits on the city court bench has the skills, the background, the knowledge, and the independence and impartiality that is key to making sure that the decisions they receive are going to be fair to each individual who comes before the court. Again, if you look at the day-to-day activities of the city court, this is probably the most important court for the citizens of the City of Cortland. Drug courts are a unique service that are provided by courts throughout the country. We've been very fortunate that Judge Meldrum was instrumental in instituting the drug court program in Cortland City Court a number of years ago. There are really two primary reasons that we look at the drug programs as critical for a city court such as Cortland. First would be, it makes our community safer because we're taking individuals who suffer from drug or alcohol addiction, we're getting them off the streets, we're getting them into treatment. It means that the streets are going to be safer, we're going to have fewer people driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, we're going to have less domestic violence, we're going to have safer homes for our citizens, especially for our children. And the second reason is, the individuals themselves, this is the last best chance many of them have to overcome a problem in their lives that has really overtaken their lives. And it's overtaken their lives and it's resulted in their being simply unable to accommodate their actions with the requirements of civil society. They're in constant trouble with the law, they are disrupting their family lives, and they're wasting their own lives. It's a tremendous burden on society to have individuals who lose jobs, they lose productivity, they disrupt their family lives, they cause problems in the community that have costs associated with them, and then they're involved in problems with law enforcement and wind up in city court. The process, however, for drug court is really a multifaceted process. Individuals have to be given an opportunity through a team process to get treatment, to find solutions for the problems that have brought them to drug and alcohol abuse and addiction, but they also have to be accountable. No drug program is going to be successful if you don't have a good team concept, but you also have to have leadership, and that leadership is the judge in almost every one of these programs, and the judge has to be ready and available to step in and swiftly deal with problems if folks are not compliant with the drug program treatment. I would like to see the program expanded because we have so many individuals in our community that we see and read about in the press right now. We have a tremendous methamphetamine problem in the City of Cortland. We have folks who are manufacturing it in their homes, they're manufacturing it in their automobiles. This is a public health problem as well as a problem for these individuals. Additionally, we have opiate problem in the city that we probably didn't have 15 or 20 years ago. And if we don't expand it, that problem is just going to continue to grow in the City of Cortland. So I think a strong drug court program, but with strict requirements for compliance, is the key to making that successful in the future. In the city court, one area that I've looked at over the years that sometimes doesn't get the full attention that I believe it should is on the civil side of the city court docket. We have landlord-tenant disputes, we have code enforcement issues, we have quality of life violation issues, public safety issues. We also have small claims court. These are frequently looked at as perhaps less serious for most people than the criminal docket before the city court, but for the individuals who are involved in these matters before the court, these are frequently the most important things that are going on in their lives at that point in time, and they need to be assured that the court is going to take them seriously, that they're going to be heard promptly, that they're going to get full hearings, that the judge is going to go through the full process of deliberation on these cases, and that they're going to get fair determinations from the city court judge. That would be the key area that I would like to see some emphasis on if I'm elected to the city court. I think to do a good job in deliberations, it's really a three-step process. The judge has to be informed, the judge has to be impartial, and the judge has to know the law. To be informed, the court has to provide a very clear avenue and platform for the advocates, both on the prosecution side and on the defense side, or in civil cases, on the plaintiff side and the defense side, to provide that information to the court, to instruct the court on the facts that need to be looked at in the case, and to instruct the court where the advocates believe the law should be applied on a given case. A key to that is a judge has to be a good listener, and I believe that that's one of my strong suits, and it would be something that I would take to the bench with me every day. The second aspect of this is that a judge has to be truly impartial. You cannot go into the deliberation process with preconceived notions about how this case should be decided or how it's going to come out. You have to weigh the facts, weigh the evidence, and give the individual parties before the court a fair and impartial decision. That's what they come to the court for, and that's what they deserve and expect. The third thing is, to make that second step a reality, you have to know the law. In my 33 years of practice, I have been involved in a broad array of cases. I have a deep knowledge of the substantive law that would be important in the city court. We do primarily criminal cases in the city court, and I have a very broad experience in criminal cases. I've tried several dozen criminal cases to jury verdicts. I've tried an attempted murder case in county court to a jury verdict. I have tried civil cases also to jury verdicts in Supreme Court. I'm well versed in the criminal procedure law. I'm well versed in issues concerning search warrants, identification testimony, confessions that would be weighed by the court in deciding cases. I'm also willing to be educated. I know that a judge is not going to know all the answers on the substantive law, and I'm going to have to rely on attorneys to point out areas where I need to be educated, and I have to dig into these things myself as well. So the key is, before the deliberation is completed, to make sure that I've understood the facts, that I'm giving an impartial decision to the litigants, and that I've truly informed myself on the substantive law that needs to be applied in the case. When I first gave consideration to running for city court, I knew that having my qualifications rated would be a critical component in any campaign that I might be involved in. The New York State Office of Court Administration runs a program of qualification review for candidates for judicial positions. That independent review commission meets in each of the judicial districts throughout New York State, and they review the credentials, background, experience of each of the candidates for judicial office. This is a voluntary process. You don't need to go through it, but I thought it was important that if I was going to represent individuals in the City of Cortland as their city court judge, I needed to go through this experience. It was an interesting experience, going back through and assembling information concerning the cases that I've been involved in, both litigation matters and non-litigation matters, general practice matters. Was a little bit of an eye-opener for me. You know, we work at a pretty fast pace in our practices, and we forget from day to day some of the cases that were a big part of our lives in earlier years. So that was an interesting process to go through, and it was also a rigorous process because I had to provide detailed information about my background, my credentials, my experience in court, my writing samples. I had to show that I had the qualities that are necessary to give good written decisions. I also had to give information about my background in terms of community activities, things that I do outside of the law that would bear on my capabilities and qualities or qualifications to be a city court judge. I had an opportunity to provide information to the commission concerning my service on the Loaves and Fishes Board of Directors for 20-some odd years. Give them a little bit of information about my activities on behalf of the Board of Trustees at Cortland Memorial Hospital, my activities with Rotary, etc. I think what the commission is focused on is getting a full understanding of the candidate that comes before the commission to determine, is this an individual who truly is a rounded individual, both in the law and in civic society, who's going to be a good judge, a good impartial and independent individual in that capacity. There are 3 ratings for individuals who come before the commission. You can be rated as not qualified, rated as qualified, or rated as highly qualified. I was rated as qualified by the commission, met with them in June of this year, went through an interview process that took place in Binghamton, administered by the Office of Court Administration and the commission, and then shortly thereafter was advised of the commission of their finding that I was qualified for this position. I was glad that I went through the process. It was interesting, challenging, and gave me a better awareness of the things that I would be thinking about if I'm successful as the candidate for City Court Judge. I think it's important for each of the candidates to avail themselves of screening and rating processes because we need to know that we've been vetted by our peers and that we have been determined to be qualified for the positions we seek when we're running for judicial office. I've spent 33 years in active practice, and I've been involved in litigated court cases throughout that 33-year period. My life as an attorney has really been separated into 2 distinct periods. The first was about 20 or 22 years of practice where my litigation concentration was in the criminal law, the matrimonial law, and a number of civil cases as well, some contract actions, civil damage claims, and personal injury claims. The second period in my career, as my practice matured, a number of the attorneys in our office took over a number of the criminal cases that I had handled previously and the matrimonial cases that I had handled previously. But I found some new litigation avenues and took on some fairly complex cases in the surrogates court, continue to try civil personal injury cases in the Supreme Courts. And throughout my career, in both the first segment and the second segment, I've had an opportunity to argue cases before the appellate division, both in Albany for the 3rd Department and in Rochester for the 4th Department. My litigation activities as an advocate have certainly really formed who I am as an attorney today, because you have to understand your client's cases, you have to research them, you have to understand the complexities of those cases, and then you have to present them to the fact finders and to the judges to make sure that they're presented appropriately. Arguing before the appellate division gives you a little different perspective, because here you're looking at a case the way a judge looks at a case. You really have to look at both sides and argue both sides to the appellate division, because they want to know the distinctions that really are critical in reviewing what happened at the trial court level. I would say cumulatively, these courtroom experiences have provided me with a platform, a skill set of substantive knowledge, procedural knowledge, understanding of clients' problems and experiences that really uniquely qualify me to serve on the city court bench and to decide cases for litigants who come before me. I think of 2 particular cases that I was involved in that really I look back on, and I think these were high points in my professional career. I had the opportunity in Cortland County Court approximately 10 years ago to represent a young man who was charged with attempted murder. He was an African American. The evidence against him, while circumstantial, was somewhat damaging. He convinced me, however, in my discussions and my meetings with him, that he was not the perpetrator of the crime that he was charged with. He convinced me that he was innocent of this crime, and convinced me that we needed to take this case fully through a jury verdict. My client was offered a very good disposition by the district attorney right on the eve of trial. He had been in jail, could not make bail, and had been in jail awaiting trial for approximately 9 months. If he had taken that deal, he was going to go to jail for probably another 6 or 7 months, and then he would have been out. He had no significant prior criminal history, and he told me, Mike, he said, when we're done with this case, I'll be getting out anyway, so let's go ahead and try it. He had great confidence in the jury system, and it turned out that that confidence was well placed. At the end of that week-long trial, he was acquitted of all 17 counts that he'd been charged with, and it was a high point in my career. And I would say that the second case that really stands out for me as a formative case in my professional career was a personal injury case that I handled in Onondaga Supreme Court in 2002. This was shortly after the events of September 11th. I represented a young man who was discharged from the military at the time. He was injured in an industrial accident, but had a good military career. The case was a highly technical case. We had scientific testimony from expert witnesses, and it was a highly contested case on the liability issue. At the end of that case, we got a very positive and significant verdict on behalf of my client. And I looked at that experience, how important it was for this young man and his family to get that good result. And that was as a result of hard work and good facts that we had in that case. One other point on that was at the conclusion of that case, Judge Tormey, who was the presiding judge on that particular case, stated to me in an off-the-record comment following the jury verdict that he looked at the presentation of evidence and he felt that the jury was convinced that my client was the type of individual who, on the day of September 11th, would have been running towards the Twin Towers, not away from them. And I believe that that's a fair characterization of my client, and I'm glad I was able to present that evidence so that the jury might have taken it that way. Certainly. If we look at the flip side of the criminal case that I mentioned previously, I had a client who was convinced that he was going to have a fair trial, that there was going to be an impartial judge and an impartial jury adjudicating his case, while his attorney, throughout that whole process, and we were in trial for a week, I was literally dripping sweat when I went into court every morning. I realized how significant this case was for my client. I also realized that he had turned down from the district attorney's perspective, a very fair offer to resolve this case if my client had been guilty. And I knew the risk of the length of incarceration that he was going to serve if he in fact was found guilty at the conclusion of that trial. Those are humbling moments for an attorney when you go through that process and the client puts his faith in you that you're going to do a good job on his behalf. The second area of practice that I've had that has really given me a greater insight in terms of the importance of a judge's ruling and decisions was in the matrimonial area. I tried a number of matrimonial cases, and judges, good judges, making hard decisions that are going to affect people's lives for a long period of time. They're going to affect their relations with their children. They're going to affect educational opportunities, a broad array of impacts for a family. Good judges take these extremely seriously, and good judges are also good teachers. They're instructing and teaching the attorneys throughout these processes. So I would look at those two areas and say that those are clearly things that have shaped me or informed me in terms of how I have to be as a litigant and how I would have to be as a judge as well. People that know me and know me well know that I'm a strong advocate for positions that I believe in, not just in the law, but in my personal life. I look at my activities with Cortland Loaves and Fishes. I look at my activities with my church. If I'm committed to a position, I'm going to advocate on behalf of that position, and that's what lawyers do. We are truly advocates on behalf of clients. It'll be a change to be a judge, because now you have to set aside the advocacy and you have to replace it with impartiality. But that process of going through and advocating on behalf of clients really shapes your understanding, because you have to look at both sides of these problems if you're going to be a good advocate, and that's what a judge does. A judge is really stepping back and looking at both sides of the equation or the problem. There are really three keystones to being a good judge, and they're called the 3 I's. They are independence, impartiality, and integrity. I don't think there have been any activities in my professional career where I didn't want to do a good job, or I didn't want to do the best that I could, either on behalf of my clients or in advocating a position. If I'm going to be the City Court Judge of Cortland, I want to do the best possible job that I can in that role. And I think that the platform of skills and experiences that I've gone through, both professionally and in my personal and civic life, are exactly the things that will allow me to do a good job as an impartial judge with independence and with integrity. Well, first let me say that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to compare or contrast myself with the qualifications or credentials of the other candidates, and they can speak to those. But I will tell the individuals who have a chance to vote for me in the city court election this fall that as I sit here today, I know that I am a much better attorney today than I was 20 years ago. It's simply life experiences, the work that I've done in the courtroom, the work that I've done with clients outside of the courtroom. These are the components that have shaped who I am today, the man that I am today, and the attorney that I am today. I also look at the civic experiences that I've had, my family life, my activities with my church. These have all helped to shape who I am today, and I feel that they've given me a very stable platform upon which to launch this run for City Court Judge, and they certainly provide me with the skills that I'm going to need and the impartiality that I'm going to need, and I believe the integrity that is required for me to be a good City Court Judge. I have appreciated this opportunity to address these questions for you. Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, I'm going to see many of you out in the community as we go door to door. I hope you'll be willing to ask me any questions that you might have concerning my credentials and my qualifications to be your next City Court Judge. I hope that you're going to find that I do have those qualifications, and I look forward to your support in the primary election on September 10th, where I'm hoping you'll give me your vote for City Court Judge. Thank you.